Welcome back to the show, everybody. It's so great to have you on this Feel Good Friday. Hope you're doing well, because yes, Jamil Jivani just laid the smack down in committee yesterday, and we'll be discussing that. But as well, hasn't it been a crazy week? So much going on, so much that you're like, ooh, Monday's coming before the holidays, and it's getting very interesting. The rumors are speculating. They're swirling around. Will Chrystia Freeland be here in the new year? Will she be replaced by Carney? We'll find out all of that, hopefully within the next couple of weeks or in the new year. And then as well as speculation, is Trudeau stepping down? There's all these types of questions that are circulating. But today we're going to get into the fun stuff, the things that will kind of lift some spirits and maybe encourage you a little bit. And that's Jamil Jivani giving the gears to the DEI minister in committee yesterday. You know, Jamil Jivani is one of the more newly elected Conservative MPs in the party, won in a by-election in Durham, and he's probably been the least new MP that we've seen. He's a backbencher, and you wouldn't know it, considering how involved he has been up to this point. He's a very well-learned man. We'll discuss more about him, but without any more delay, let's get right to the committee hearing.
Minister, last time we had a conversation at the Heritage Committee, it became apparent you were not familiar with the Black Justice Strategy. Have you had a chance to read the external report for that yet?
Mr. Chair, I always have engaged with the worked alongside my colleague, Minister Jivani, on the Black Justice Strategy, and I'll continue to do this work.
So, again, not clear whether you've read it, which is, again, what happened last time. Can you comment on whether you support the recommendations in that report, the policy recommendations?
Mr. Chair, there are many recommendations that come out of different reports. My colleague, Minister Jivani.
And it's really clear here that Jamil is setting her up. You'll see he's getting to the kicker here. But it is very interesting, the fact that he's calling on this minister, the person who the minister of DEI herself. Have you looked at the Black Justice Report and the recommendations in it? And she can't give an answer.
Is leading this work. I work extremely closely with him in addressing systemic racism, systemic anti-Black racism within our institutions, within our criminal justice system, and we're going to continue to do that work alongside my colleague, Minister Jivani.
Well, one of the policy recommendations in that report is the decriminalization of a 30-day supply of illicit drugs. And I think members of the Black community who saw that might have questions about whether you support it or not. So I think it's fair to ask you, do you support that policy recommendation?
Mr. Chair, as I said, that's the work that my colleague, Minister Jivani, is leading. We work extremely closely with the Black stakeholders across this country, addressing systemic racism within our institutions, within our criminal justice system is extremely important. I work alongside my colleague, and when the justice strategy comes out, the honourable member can look into it and read it and really understand what it aims to do, rather than try to imply.
Has called this history-making and a milestone for Black people in this country. And I think it's fair for Black people to then look at it and say, is this what you intend to do to our communities? Do you intend to decriminalize a 30-day supply of drugs in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion? And to pose that question to a minister and a member of the Liberal government's cabinet. So why is this such a difficult question to answer?
The reason why it's so difficult to answer is because it's true. And it looks really bad on the DEI minister to push or accept this recommendation of having a 30-day supply of illicit drugs in the Black community. What we've seen when we've allowed this policy happen in other parts of the country is it gets real bad real quick. And now you're going to allow it in a targeted community that's already struggling at this point with the horrible liberal policies that have been implemented in the name of DEI that have caused more destruction in these communities. So yes, this DEI minister knows exactly what Jamil's getting at, and she's not giving an answer on it. And you're going to see here, he's going to push even further, and she's going to give even more of a non-answer, and I'll explain even further where she's getting at with this.
Mr. Chair, clearly the member, I've known this now for a long time, and it was very clear in our last interaction, the member does not understand what diversity, inclusion, and equity actually means.
Thank you for articulating that. Maybe I can ask you some questions and learn something today about diversity and inclusion. I've got a statement here from a witness who appeared before the Justice Committee, Rachel Cook from the University of Alberta, who said, and I quote, "I think the EDI system has made the problem of anti-Semitism worse. I think it can start at the top, but it also starts in institutions and in massively funding EDI programming, such that quite literally when I ask who decides who is in these EDI meetings, is it a percentage of the population? Their response was, it's in the groups that deserve equity and deserve inclusion. So, Minister, I'd like to ask, who deserves equity and who deserves inclusion in your mind?
Get her.
Mr. Chair, my goal as a minister for diversity, inclusion, and persons with disabilities is to ensure that we're creating equal opportunities for every single person in this country.
Did you catch that? He asked, all right, who deserves this? What groups deserve this? And then that second answer, she purposely skips over the word equity, which I find really interesting. Listen to this again.
Who deserves inclusion in your mind?
Mr. Chair, my goal as a minister for diversity, inclusion, and persons with disabilities is to ensure that we're creating equal opportunities for every single person in this country.
I find that very interesting. Only because she skips over the term equity and then hits home with the term equal opportunities. Almost like that's the thing that the right has been calling for forever. We believe on meritocracy on this side of the political spectrum, and that's what she's getting at. We believe in equal opportunity. Yes, we want everyone to have equal opportunity in this country. But the problem is these DEI experts are like, equality is not what we want. We want equity, meaning we want to treat different groups with special privileges so that they can have equity. But then she slyly moves around that term equity and then goes right into equal opportunity. That is not a mistake. And then watch what continues going forward.
Regardless of their age, regardless of their race, regardless of their identities, regardless of their abilities, and that takes fundamental changes within our institution to
Be careful, Kamal. Be careful. You sound like a conservative now.
Do that work. You have to be deliberate about making that change. Clearly something the Conservative Party does not understand. They can think back to, Mr. Speaker, they can think back to their snitch lines. We all remember the time under the Harper government.
When a Canadian...
You know a liberal knows they've lost the plot when they bring up Harper. As soon as they bring up Harper, it's over. They know they're done. They're cooked.
They have absolutely no idea what diversity inclusion means.
I'm going to get through this, so you can keep trying to filibuster if you like.
Mr. Jivani.
So when a university student from our country says that diversity, equity, and inclusion is disadvantaging her community, your response to that is, well, I just going to keep making these blanket fluff statements. She's asking quite clearly, you as the Minister of Diversity and Inclusion are in a position to answer her question. How do you decide who deserves equity and who deserves inclusion? Why are there Canadians who feel excluded by your DEI framework?
It's clear that the honourable member does not really understand. He does not understand that there are systems in place that anti-Black racism, systemic racism is a real thing. It has root causes within our institutions.
So here's the thing. No one was talking about that. No one wanted to know about that. And I know you're feeling it at home. Why doesn't she just answer the question? And it's a fair question. Very fair question. He asked, why, if DEI is so good, why do Canadians feel excluded by a DEI framework? If the whole goal is to make sure everyone's on a level playing field, why do people feel excluded? And then she goes on to say, well, you clearly don't get it. Blah, 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 blah. And that's exactly what the goal was. I know you're hearing it at home. I know you're feeling it. Why doesn't she answer the question? Because, my friends, we are introducing you to the tool in Parliament called the filibuster. And that's exactly what she's using to not answer questions. And this is a tool that a lot of people will use in committee hearings. You know, you have these different committee members who are of different political stripes. And you'll get questions from people who are going to give you softballs and who are on your team. And so you'll answer these softball questions. Then you'll have people who are a little more hostile, that we see here with Jamil. Going hard on her, asking the real questions about DEI, and she can't give any answers. And she kind of keeps talking in circles. You see, as he even mentioned here, lots of fluff, not giving any answers. And that's all by design. It's to make sure that she takes up Jamil's time. He has 5 minutes, something like that, to ask the questions of this minister about this report. And she's going to filibuster, boom, 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 keep trying to waste time, so you can't ask any more questions. And she's going to keep dodging, dipping, ducking to make sure she doesn't actually have to answer the question he's asking because, well, these people are full of it. And Canadians are seeing it. And so much so, the private sector is seeing it as well. DEI is dying. People are seeing through it for what it is and how it's been used as a tool to be weaponized against groups of people. It has not lived up to the promise that it said it was going to. Raising up all people in the workplace, raising up all Canadians in this case. It has only pushed people down in the effort to raise people up, and even in those cases, it's still failed. Let's take a look here. Right now, these are companies right now who have either completely downgraded their DEI programs or got rid of them completely. Walmart, Tractor Supply Co., John Deere, Meta and Google, Microsoft, Society for Human Resource Management, Best Buy, Johnson & Johnson, Starbucks, Lowe's, Ford, Polaris, Harley-Davidson, Brown-Forman Corp., and the list is growing. These companies see how unpopular and how unproductive they've been that they're axing them completely. And so now that attitude is being moved to the public sector, as it should. People like Jamil are now roasting and going after people like the DEI minister to see what they actually believe. What have they accomplished? Oh, now you're going to make 30 days worth of illicit drugs legal within the Black community? You think that's a good idea? We see what happened in Vancouver. You think that's a good idea for that community? And there's people in the Black community who are rightfully being like, can we talk about this? Why are we making this legal? This is not helpful for us. And then it's like, well, you don't get equity and inclusion. It's so far above you. You're just a racist. And she couldn't actually say that because of Jamil's skin color. And that's how the game is played. These are just race grifters who are losing the game, and they keep talking in circles and circles and circles. And I guarantee you, if Jamil was a white guy, the term racist would have been thrown out fairly quickly in that hearing. Very quickly. Just to dismiss him. But she couldn't do it. All she could say is like, oh, you just don't get it. You're an idiot. Conservatives are dumb. Conservatives have never understood this. And then she pulls out the Harper years because that had any bearing on this. The DEI minister is losing. And of course, they're going to be clinging on to power because when people realize their grift is over, when they realize that they're just perpetuating more racism, it means they lose their job. Plain and simple. That's what's happening right now. And as I said to start out the show, Jamil Jivani is he's, as a backbencher, he's jumping right on into it. He's a very well-learned man. He's got a degree from Yale in law. He's been involved with different groups and activism, which makes him perfect to go after people like the DEI minister. This is a guy who's been involved in a lot of activism. As you can see here, he's been on both sides of the aisle. He's been a liberal. He's been a conservative. He's just I hate to say it, he's a common sense conservative. He's just a common sense guy. He's a typical Canadian who's just middle of the road, who just sees what's going on, calls it as it is. And as many people know, at this point, as we see here, he's really good friends with J.D. Vance, future VP of the United States of America. They went to Yale together. They're good friends. He knows people, he's well connected, and he knows what he's doing. First, when you kind of see his background, you get a little, I'm sure some of you go, oh, your backs get up a little bit. Oh, can we trust him? Well, considering how hard he's going at the left right now, you can trust him to a degree, as much as you can trust a politician. He's got a very solid background, and he's digging in on these policies. And if he wasn't the real deal, he wouldn't be doing stuff like this.
Do you believe Catholic hospitals should be forced against their will to provide euthanasia to their patients? Do you believe that doctors and nurses should be coerced under the threat of losing their jobs to provide euthanasia or make referrals for euthanasia? This is a reality for healthcare professionals in Canada today.
And he goes on about being a healthcare practitioner who happens to be of a faith background. Should they provide euthanasia or not? To some people, that's a conscience issue for a lot of people. But in the government nowadays, called to go against that. Your faith doesn't matter in the secular world. And he's standing up for these people. What MP in their right mind, any political stripe, conservative, liberal, NDP, would be doing this? Backbenchers at best, who have no political influence. Which, yes, Jamil is a backbencher, but he's gaining a lot of political influence, especially because of the people he knows. And he's putting it on the line because of things that he believes in. You can say it's right or wrong. That's fine. My respect increases a lot with him because he's willing to do something that's very unpopular in this country. Standing up for Christians. That's a group that you're not supposed to stand up for. That's the group that we're trying to knock down. They're the ones who've had supremacy of everything for so long. And he's like, no, they need protections. Like here, this one was very popular, and this one made it all over social media with 1.2 million views.
Jamil Jivani here, Member of Parliament for Durham. I'm sounding the alarm. We need to do more to protect Christians in Canada. Now, when you see a Christmas tree like this in Parliament, you might think that's a sign of respect for Christians. But what good is a Christmas tree here in Parliament when you have a federal government that will not lift a finger to protect Christians from governments and corporations abusing their power. What good is a Christmas tree here in Parliament when you have a federal government that will not fight anti-Christian bigotry in Canadian institutions?
And again, you can agree or disagree with him. Fundamentally in this argument, it doesn't matter. It's the fact that he's coming out publicly and saying these things, which is very unpopular. And, the argument is like, well, okay, like, the left is like, come on, no one's attacking Christians. It's like, I mean, there's an acceptable group you can attack, and it isn't Muslims. Jews have officially been thrown into that group lately. You can attack them all you want. But Christians, ever since this political party's gotten in, open season, you can say whatever you want to them. And I'm not crying as a Christian or whatever. It is what it is. It's just a part of the game. If you know your faith, you know the history, you know it's coming. It's just a part of being a Christian. Deal with it. It is what it is. But to see an MP getting political on it is very interesting to me. If an MP is willing to put his political career on the line like this, it shows me that there's a level of trust you can have with him. That's just my perspective on it. Coming back to this, though. It was nice to see Jamil give the gears to this DEI official. Because now we've seen through it. We've seen enough of it. We've seen it play out where there's not been a beneficial program. It's been harmful in a lot of ways since it's been implemented. It's actually introduced more disparity, more racism, and more bigotry into our systems than it has helped. That's just the reality. The problem is you have to keep stoking the fears of racism. You have to keep stoking the fears of bigotry, or else these people don't have jobs. There will always be a problem with racism in general. It's human nature. They're tribal. Just how it goes. There's issues in pockets in Canada. There's always has been. But overall, as a Canadian population, racism just wasn't a thing when I grew up. Growing up in Toronto the way I did, it is what it was. You were around so many different cultures. It just furthest thing from my mind. And just the pompous attitude here. You don't know what equity, diversity, and inclusion really is. You're right. We don't. Because clearly it's all a sham. Please leave. Axe this department as soon as the Conservatives get in, and let's get back to normal. Last but not least, I want to get back to a post that Jamil posted over 2 years ago now. This sums up this man's heart and the hearts of all Canadians across the country, which is something I do appreciate. He wrote this: "My father is Muslim. My mom is a Christian with parents from Ireland and Scotland. My neighbors are growing up were mostly from India, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, South Africa. But I'm proudly Canadian. My life is only possible in a few places. I respect my country, and I expect our leaders to respect it too. Thanks, Dre Jamil." Thank you for your work, sir. We appreciate you seeing what you did and being able to ask some serious, direct questions of this DEI minister. And just exposing, even her lack of answering is enough for us. It's exposing that she doesn't know what she's talking about. It's exposing that she doesn't care. It's exposing that she doesn't care to help the very community she claims to be helping. 30-day supply of illicit drugs in Black communities. Yep, we've seen this play out before. It goes tremendously well. Dare I say this is a tool to subvert Black families in Canada? We saw what happened in Vancouver with the general populace. Now it's a more targeted approach. Spooky. Should be asking yourselves that. Anyways, have yourselves a great Friday. I'm out.